we're going to look at core principles in this module. So let's talk about raindrop as a modality. Now, we've discussed in previous modules that there are many versions of raindrop technique and that Gary Young used to intuit what each person needed every time he did it. However, in developing the practical training, we distilled core principles of raindrop technique from all the different methods. They are modesty, professionalism, connection, and application of the technique. So there are certain aspects of each of these core principles that relate to the topic. We'll discuss those each in turn. Let's look at modesty. It's really important that we practice good draping of towels across a client's body to ensure that they feel safe and supported. This is something that will be demonstrated to you at your practical training weekend, and we encourage you to practice it as often as you can. The beautiful thing about excellent draping skills means that you could apply a technique in any potential environment, regardless of how many people are around, because you're confident in establishing that kind of modesty and holding a space for someone so that they can feel safe and secure. Practitioner standards suggest that you only ever reveal the area that you are working on. And like we said before, it's essential to learn how to do it well so that if you are at a market store wanting to give a massage, or you are at a demonstration expose, or if you are in someone else's home and the lounge room is the only place that you can afford them their treatment, then understanding and being able to apply excellent draping skills and observing modesty will really, really benefit you. Professionalism is a really important core example. So we adhere to and teach the practice of the International Institute of Complementary Therapies, in other words, IICT. We adhere to and teach their code of ethics. They have an excellent code of ethics that is governed internationally. And not only that, Raindrop Australia is a recognised training organisation with IICT. So that is another reason that we follow their code of ethics and have adopted that. Gary Young also taught that in order to help open the flow of energy between both the practitioner and the client, that all removable jewellery should be taken off prior to the session. Another example of professionalism might be that you would draw the curtains for privacy, ensuring that no one could look in. Or potentially, if you're in someone else's home, make sure that the pets and children are out of the room. Or if they're in your home, the same. Make sure that their phones are off, and that's for you and them, but especially the client. Even if they just put it to a do not disturb or flight mode, because it's really important that the client allows for them to have this time with you for themselves. They help to create the space by switching their phone off. It's also important if you're working from home to have, or even in a Main Street clinic, if you are a sole worker, put a sign on your door that says do not disturb or session in progress, just to ensure that there are no interruptions. By removing jewellery, you will remove any hazard of accidentally scratching your client with your watch or your ring. And another aspect of professionalism that we promote is follow-up care with the next stage of the client wellness program. This is where you call your Raindrop client after they've received their technique and just check in with them 24 hours later to see how they're feeling, to see if they've had any major release symptoms or anything to that effect. And then to discuss with them the next steps around their self-care program or their wellness program. Another important core principle is connection. You never want to lose body contact. Once you connect in that valor balance, that first step, people feel you with them. And to lose body contact, they'll actually feel that separation of that connection. So by using the eye pillow and drawing from the ancient Egyptian ritual of performing the treatment in silence in a dimly lit room, you're going to help the person receiving to connect to themselves and to you on a deeper level. Gary Young used to say that when he started with right through to the finish with a client, that he would be with their spirit. That's why we always want to maintain body contact. That silence helps create that connection. That maintaining that body contact also helps that connection. And Raindrop Australia has been fortunate enough to have designed a raindrop belt which holds all of your bottles. So there's no need to let go of your client and walk away to collect the next oil. You can have them on your person while you're conducting your treatment. These are available for purchase before or at your practical training, and we highly recommend them because they just do make life so much easier. And eye pillows are lovely in that you can also purchase them at your practitioner training and your practical training. But they're just lovely because of the way that they help a person to just soften down into themselves. Also, in ensuring that you create that beautiful connection. Now, there is some more core principles, and that is in the application of the technique. So when it comes to the application of Raindrop, it is always the same application of the technique. The oils may vary or be intuited differently for each individual person, but the order from start to finish is always the same. So some of these core principles around application of the technique is that the oils are always neat unless they're contraindicated. So we never dilute unless there is a contraindication that says we should dilute. And that's something that we teach you in your safety data. All movements are done from the base of the spine up the spine towards the neck and the occiput. All movements are done in groups of 3. 3 equals the power of God and the sacred Trinity. All circles are performed clockwise. Now, the reason that they are performed clockwise is when the DNA double helix spins in a healthy body, it spins in a clockwise direction. So effectively, by activating our oils and rotating them clockwise in the palm of our hands, we are activating the essential oil to be in a state of support, and then the application to the body also continues it into that state of support and wellness. And you really want to have your fingernails short, like no whites showing at all, and filed diagonally across the top of the nail so that there's no sharp edges. This is going to allow you to just be able to go a little deeper in VitaFlex technique and some of the moves that you'll be required to do to ensure that you're getting the full or giving the full benefit to your client on the table. Now, I want to talk a little bit about VitaFlex technique. It's a really important core principle. It's the second step of Raindrop technique. And VitaFlex was brought to the Western world by a fellow called Stanley Burroughs. He had channeled this information around sort of 1928, 1929. He was a healer and channeler of that era. And he researched the origins of VitaFlex and found that it dated back 5,000 years to ancient Tibet. It is the ancient Tibetan reflexology, if you will, of ancient times. And we are so fortunate that it has been introduced to the Western world for the absolute amazing benefits that come from VitaFlex technique. Now, Gary was fortunate enough to learn VitaFlex, the full VitaFlex technique, from Stanley in the 1970s. And in Gary's vision, VitaFlex was seen in his dream as part of this master technique that Gary has created in Raindrop technique. In the slide you're looking at the moment, the picture on the top right-hand corner is of a person holding the foot and applying the VitaFlex technique to that foot. Now, I want you to understand that there's been loads of changes to Raindrop over the years. You may have seen the original Raindrop Technique DVD, which originally was included in the kit but no longer is. Gary's changed the technique since that DVD was. Gary had changed the technique since that DVD was produced. And so we've got a summary for you of what the changes were. The first is you no longer use Ortho-Ease. Any form of carrier oil like Ortho-Ease slows down the penetration and effectiveness of the essential oils that we use. And it slows down the penetration by about 60 or 70%. We only use carrier oil in Raindrop technique in two situations. The first is if there's a burning sensation on the skin, you use the carrier oil to extinguish the heat. The second is if someone is highly toxic, you will dilute the essential oils in carrier oil to reduce the potency of the Raindrop technique. Now, we're going to teach you how to do this at your practical training weekend. So don't panic for just now. But I wanted to give you an understanding that Ortho-Ease is a lovely addition if you wanted to add in some massage or utilize your hot stones at the end of your Raindrop session for a person. But the plain V6 carrier oil is more than adequate to extinguish heat or to be used for dilution purposes if someone is carrying an unusually high amount of toxicity in their bodies. Another change was that in America, the use of a warm, moist towel at the end of the session made Raindrop technique into a therapy rather than a technique. We'll also teach you how to do that at your Raindrop practitioner assessment because it's a lovely pampering technique that you can add just to amplify it for those extra special clients that you have. But the reason it was removed is it ran the risk that untrained facilitators could have the towel too hot and burn the recipient's skin. Gary chose at that time to remove that step from Raindrop technique, and what he found was that there was no change in the effectiveness. However, I have personally had an amazing experience where I had quite a lot of visual awake dreaming, you might call it, happen in the 10 minutes that I was allowed to just soak in the oils underneath a beautiful hot towel compress, which is one of the reasons that we wanted to include it in your day 3 of pampering at your practitioner assessment retreat. So that's something for you to look forward to. There is also another change that was made that Gary asked to have altered, and that is Gary made another change, and that is that the lateral stretch on the back is also no longer performed in Raindrop technique, and this is also for legal reasons. There was a new step added, and that is the lymphatic finger pull. It's a very powerful lymphatic pump done at the end of Raindrop technique. And there's been lots of other small upgrades that Gary Young had made to Raindrop technique, which we will go into as we teach you the technique on your practical training weekend. Let's think about what does a recipient experience after Raindrop technique? They're usually feeling emotionally balanced. They're going to have a height increase due to the relaxation of the back muscles. They're going to sleep really well. They'll have good bowel movements. They'll feel alert and energized over the coming days. They'll have an overall sense of well-being. Occasionally, they might feel emotional or groggy, and sometimes there's even an increase in pain initially as the body realigns. The process of massaging and relaxing the body in Raindrop technique can allow a release of toxins. It's also called a detox. Symptoms like from a detox can be tired, headaches, thirst, strong smelling stools, urine, underarms, bad breath, mood swings, skin rashes, nausea and vomiting. These indicate that toxins are being pulled out of the cells but not eliminated quickly enough from the body. Sometimes a few days after a raindrop technique, it's possible for someone to have a skin rash. And that rash is pulling the toxins out, and it's coming out in the skin because it's the fastest way for the body to expel it. It's really important that you check in with your client, make sure that they're drinking plenty of water, which is one of those core principles that we talked about in our professionalism of following up with customer care. You want to make sure that they are drinking plenty of pure water. Other beverages like soft drink or coffee or tea is not counting. And you want to ensure and just casually ask them if they're having regular daily bowel movements. You could encourage them to reduce the acidic foods in their diet while they're going through that release. And there is this amazing handout that we encourage you to give to your clients before they come. It's a document that's called What to Expect and Preparing for Raindrop Technique. It's going to highlight some of the aspects of what they'll experience from receiving a treatment from you, as well as how they can best prepare themselves, like hydrating the day before that they come and not potentially having a big night on the grog or something to that effect. We give you digital copies of these, so you will receive them at your practical training weekend in a hard copy so that you can laminate it. You've always got one on the go with you then, but we'll also give you a digital copy as well so you can print it off anytime you need to. Now, another question that we often get asked is how often can you get raindrop technique? And we suggest that if someone is relatively balanced already, that they have one fortnightly for a couple of months. Then monthly as an ongoing maintenance program. However, this is where we encourage you to look at creating specific wellness goals for your clients and wellness and self-care programs. If someone is experiencing challenges, you could start with weekly raindrops for the first 1 to 2 months, then move to fortnightly for a couple of months, and then perform monthly as an ongoing maintenance from there. However, raindrop can be performed every 1 to 2 days if needed. However, that is really likely to stimulate a release due to the volume of oils being used. So a person could potentially have a very large detox. Now, I want you to understand that detox is symptomatic use. The compliant way to say that for your business is you're just having a release, a physical release, an emotional release, and sometimes even a spiritual shift or release is something that can occur during raindrop technique. So raindrop can be performed daily or every 1 to 2 days, but recognize that that would stimulate a massive release because of the volume of oils being used. However, they do this at the Nova Vita Clinic in Ecuador. All of their clients receive oil sessions daily, whether it's raindrop technique or neuroauricular technique. But to give you an idea, it's so nurturing and so balancing, and the body will take exactly from it what it needs. That starting in that place of fortnightly, if a person's feeling quite balanced within themselves, or perhaps weekly, engaging based on the client history forms that you will learn to fill in and what you have conversed and discussed with your client about what their self-care program might be. You will be able to ascertain then how to move forward for each individual client. All right, I'll talk to you in the next video.